Welcome back, everybody. This is our third to last meeting, if you can believe it. We've just got today and then the 19th and June the 2nd, because on the 26th, which is a Tuesday, it's actually a Monday schedule for classes. I don't know if you guys, I put it in our syllabus, but the closer we get to the time, the more relevant this information becomes. And I'm just going to remind you, because I know that some of you may have Monday classes that meet. So do you see here, Tuesday, May the 26th is an irregular day. The classes follow a Monday schedule. So our class won't meet that day, which is why we're only meeting today on the 19th of May and then on the 2nd of June, and then we're done. Okay, so time is, I guess, ticking, for lack of a better word. Today, I'm just trying to find the revised schedule. So today, we will not continue, but today we'll work on resumes. I'll set the scene, but I just want to remind you of the things that have been due up to now. Mostly did this financial literacy reflection, time management reflection was being done in the Thursday studio hour class. And then this making connections reflection, which I'll talk about a bit more, is also being done in the studio hour class. And so for now, that's, those are the most pressing items. And then resume that we'll start working on today. Some of you may already have a decent resume, so you may almost be at the point where you would have made this, submission before the time, but, we'll go through the materials and then I guess discuss later on what changes you may need to make to your resume. So I guess before we delve right into the nature of work and what employers want and the resume discussion, I just thought it might be helpful to do a little bit of a time management catch up. Last week, we built weekly schedule trackers, and we spoke about how we manage our time and potential plans for managing time in the last few weeks of the semester. So I was just thinking, yesterday I was thinking about the fact that today being the 12th of May actually marks 2 months since our face-to-face classes ended. And so we've been home doing distance learning or preparing for distance learning for 2 months already. And it's also about 3 weeks before the end of the semester. The semester ends on June the 4th. So I'm asking you guys to think about this and maybe spend a few minutes jotting stuff down, and then we'll talk. Last week, we built that weekly schedule tracker, which was that document in Excel. I'd like you to just think for a few moments and maybe jot down your thoughts about whether your time management has changed at all over the past week. It's okay if it hasn't. Maybe, this thing didn't stick, or maybe you were so good at time management that nothing needed to change. But if it has changed, how has it changed? And if not, why not? Maybe something came up in this time that has thrown you off the changes that you wanted to make. And then the second part of my question is, what can you do in these last 3 weeks to ensure that you finish the semester strong? It could be about time management. It also could be about anything else that you may need to seek support or that you want to do for yourself. So why don't we take let's say about 4 minutes, 2 minutes per question. You guys think about it, jot some stuff down, and then we'll talk at about 10:43 about what you found. Okay. I see a few people just joined. We're just answering these two questions about time management based on our work from last week, just catching up to see if people's time management has changed at all over the past week, and if so, how, and if not, why not, and then what can you do in the last 3 weeks of classes to ensure that you finish the semester strong. We're looking to feedback at about 10:43. All right. So hopefully you've had some time to think. Again, we're not that many in the class, so the floor is open for anybody who wants to share. Otherwise, I'll just call on some names to hear back from people. Does anybody want to share about how their time management has been going before I start asking individuals?
Well, I can say mine been going pretty bad. Sleeping wise, for one, it's really chaotic. I'll be sleeping like any time of the day. Some nights I'll be up all night, not
Okay.
even sleeping. Then I'll be sleeping in the day. And that's
Yeah.
the thing right now I've been trying to work on.
And are you finding that there are certain events or situations that are causing, I mean, I recognize that we're in the midst of a pandemic, so please understand that I'm seeing that as the foundation of everything. But is this like a sudden change in your sleeping patterns?
Yeah, because since I have like some of my classes till 6 p.m. in the afternoon, I just procrastinate and just be up all night. Sometimes I'll be doing my homeworks in the
Oh,
night. So I was like, oh, I have time. Let me just go do my homework. Then when I look at it, it is daytime. So I was like, oh,
it's like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. Is that what you mean?
no, it's like 6 a.m.
Oh no. Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and the thing is once you get into that pattern, and he's not on the line now, but I remember Jeremy was also saying that once you get into the pattern about going to bed really late, then it's difficult to break, right? It's difficult to break the
Yeah.
cycle. Because then it almost becomes the new normal. So do you think that this is going to be sustainable for you for the next 3 weeks or whatever until classes are finished, or are you trying to change something?
I'm trying to change it back to normal, like so I
Mm,
can go to sleep early and wake up early.
okay. And
That's what I've
have
been
you
trying
already,
to do for the past
okay.
week.
And have you had any success?
Yeah, today, my first success. I got up like
Okay, great.
around 9 and it was
Oh,
great.
so, and you made it for this class, so that's
It's
and,
true.
and what time did you go sleep last night?
2 o'clock.
Okay, so at least you got like 7 hours of sleep. I mean,
Yep.
it's getting better. Okay, so your plan moving forward is now to try and normalize your sleeping hours to get to bed a little bit earlier. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's my first step.
And your classes are going okay despite all this sleep chaos?
Yeah, my classes are going well because I stay up doing work. That's why.
Ah, okay.
And that's why I
Um,
messed with my sleeping schedule. But everything seemed better now.
okay, good, good. Well, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. Anybody else who wants to share? We're talking about how your time management may have changed over the past week. since we did the schedule tracker, and even if you weren't in the class to do the schedule tracker, just maybe talk about your time management and how and what you may want to do over the next 3 weeks before the semester ends to try and finish strong.
Well, I believe my schedule is still the same. It's like repetitive in a way. I just go to work, come home, and yeah, it's about the same.
Okay.
I would say, yeah.
All right. So and it seems like it's working for you, which is the main thing.
I mean, yeah, I just got kind of used to it.
Okay.
I don't know, still balance and make sure I prioritize everything I need to prioritize.
And you feel that you'll be able to finish the semester on a good note.
Oh, yeah, I just gotta focus more. I keep getting trying to be outside, even though, right now is not a good time to be out, but it's like, because it's getting warm and it's like, I try not to stay in the house. I need to prioritize, schoolwork.
And what does that look like? I mean, what does it actually look like to prioritize schoolwork? Because, and I'm not trying to pick on you, I'm just asking in general, because for many of us, that's the issue, is that the distraction levels are so high because we've just been stuck at home for 2 months. So what does prioritizing look like for you?
I guess, making sure to turn off the TV, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and probably go into the living room with something to stay focused. And
yeah. So you're talking about, managing your environment, if at all possible, to say, I'm not going to study with the TV blaring in the background,
exactly,
or my phone constantly pinging. Yeah, that's self-discipline. That's exactly what we should be doing. And then, like Andal was also saying, trying to manage our time in terms of when we are doing the work so that it's not causing all kinds of strange cycles in sleep and stuff. Okay. So, all right. Okay, so I guess next time we'll hear from you how you're prioritizing, if it's working, right? And I guess also prioritizing according to deadlines for the work. So the classes that have the tests coming up or the most pressing assignments have to receive a priority at this point, whether we like it or not. Okay, thank you. Anybody else, maybe one more person who wants to share if their time management has changed at all over the past week, and also what they think they may need to do for the next 3 weeks to be able to finish out the semester strong. Anastasia, I know you gave us a nice feedback last time. I don't know if you're on the line and you can hear me, but the last time you spoke so well about the fact that you realized that you had a lot of extra time that you could have used. Are you there?
Yeah, hello, I'm here.
Hi. What did you find any rethinking of your time usage at all this week, or was it kind of the same?
I mean, right now, because it's almost not the end of the semester, but I see that I have more projects to do, so I have more time to use, so it's not going to waste.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
It's more work.
So the reality of more work forced you to start using your time better. Okay.
The more work I have, the better I use my time. It's always was like this. So that's how it works.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear that you are having some success with managing your time a bit better than you had in the past. All right. Thank you, everyone, for giving your feedback. If there's, other people who wanted to comment, you're still open to comment, even if you want to do it in the chat window. You may not be comfortable talking, but I'm going to move on to what we're discussing today, which is really around what are we learning? First of all, just a brief discussion about why even be in college, why come here? What are we learning in college? How does that intersect with what employers are looking for in people that they hire? And when we think about all these things, how does that translate into how we write up a resume? Or if your resume is already perfect, then you could be working on your LinkedIn profile as well. And normally when I teach this class, I don't go so deep into the resume piece, because you do this in your internship preparation course, the people work in organization course. However, I just feel like, frankly, in this time now, I wonder if I'm frozen again because I keep getting this internet issue. In this time now of COVID, post-COVID also, where we will end up, seeing a different world of work, and some people have also lost their source of income and are trying to retool to get to, find work again, that it's important to just have a good resume set up and ready to go, so that, should opportunities arise, and they do. I mean, one of them is I think I shared with you guys over an announcement, that, the city is looking for a lot of contact tracing people. You're working basically from home, they train you remotely, and all you're doing is checking in via phone or whatever with people who have been sick or are sick, and trying to trace any contacts that they may have had with others. So, and it pays pretty well, and they're desperate for people. So those types of things exist, and we can talk more about that later. But again, the whole point of doing this is because I just want you guys to be as ready as possible to be able to re-enter whatever, the world looks like when we're coming out of, I guess, this pause. And I know we're coming out in stages. So with all of that said, I wanted us to just briefly spend, and all these materials are on the Zoom call for today, but some of them you don't really need to pull down. I'll just go over it. I just want us to spend literally 5 minutes talking about these 3 questions. I'm first going to give you some time to think, and then you guys can just shout out answers. What are the arguments for, sorry, this should say and, what are the arguments for and against the college education? This is especially, I think, critical now as, people consider whether they will even continue college education. What do students expect to learn in college? What should students be taught in college? So I'm going to give you maybe 3 minutes to just, we're not writing a dissertation here. This is just to chat. So maybe 3 minutes to think about your answers to those 3 questions. And then I will just lead a quick discussion that we'll have together about what we think those answers are. Okay. So you have until 10:57 just to think through those, and then we'll talk more. All right. Any thoughts? The floor is open to talk. Maybe I should actually just stay on the share because you can see. What do you guys think are some of the arguments for being in college or against finishing your degree? Any takers?
Do you mean like what do you mean exactly by that?
So what I'm saying is, you know, especially in this time of crisis, there's a lot of talk about, and there was talk before about whether there's value in going to college and getting a degree. So I'm just talking about like basic reasons why you think it would be good to stay in college, or why some people may say that it's not a good idea.
Well, I think many people would argue maybe for like tuition, you know, during this time, especially for people who aren't getting financial aid. I think, yeah, they would
That
mainly
it's
just
expensive, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like school would be like, I guess, the less of their concerns. Right now, they'll probably be
Right.
more worried about family and stuff.
Right. Okay.
That's not, I don't know.
So why do you stay? What are you hoping to get?
I'm hoping to get my degree because it's been 4 years coming, and I'm like, I need to just get this one. Oh, at least, even if it's just my associate's degree, I just need to, you know, because it's like a personal goal. So I'm like, you know, thank God you guys are still going, you know, because I thought just like the public schools, no, we would have probably
we gotta keep going. Yeah, we know.
And that would have been like right. So I guess it's just a personal goal for me to keep going.
And you perceive that your circumstances may change with at least having an associate in terms of job prospects?
Yeah, at least, you know, because I think in if I have some type of healthcare experience plus an associate's in healthcare management, I think that will put me in a good position to get a better job. Yeah.
All right. That makes sense to me. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to share either about that question, or what do students expect to learn? What are you expecting to learn in college, or what do you think you should be taught in college? Remember, we're looking at this with a view to thinking about employability, right? What types of skills or things do you think you need to learn in or be taught in college in order to be a successful employee?
Well, I think this is Jonathan Castro. Good morning.
Jonathan, hi.
Well, I think you need to learn communication skills, creativity. So I think that's really important in order to start like a job or something.
Can you tell me what you mean by, I agree with you, so don't worry, I'm not questioning your statement, but I just want you to elaborate a bit more on what you mean by creativity.
Like how to work with people or something. How to provide your thoughts and what you think about, like let's say like a topic or something.
Good. Those are all good comments. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So communication skills and creativity. Does anybody want to add anything to what Jonathan and Tanisha just said before we move on? Last chance to get your voice heard.
Hello?
Yes.
So I think that it definitely depends on each major that we are studying, but I think our system should teach us how to be adaptable in different situations like this. For example, how we can be still productive and still work let's say if it's totally distant work, if it's work from home, how we can do it no matter what if we can't even go to the office or something like this. And it's again, it's both the industry where we want to work has to change, and the educational system also has to adapt to this.
This is a critical point as well. Thank you, Anastasia, for saying that. I think what some of what I hear you saying is we're talking about flexible thinking on the part of, you know, the employee or the student, but also on the part of the institution or the industry, you know, or the employer, because we should all be able to basically problem solve, right? If our circumstances change so dramatically like they have now, how do we adapt? How do we think flexibly instead of just being rigid and saying, okay, well, this is how we do this, and there's, you know, we don't want to change. We have to say, well, that now that everybody's working from home for so long, and it seems that people in certain instances are as productive or sometimes even more productive than they would be if they were in an office, is it necessary for companies to be so rigid about you have to come into an office if your entire job can be done from home, or can be done from home on some days of the week and so on? So yes, it's like you said, it may depend on the major. Some people have to be, you know, on site or whatever, but you're talking about trying to teach people to think flexibly about their situation and be able to possibly problem solve around that. So thank you, that's an important point. So they are obviously, I'm sure, myriad other things that people think they should be taught in college. You know, higher education has come under a lot of fire for things like what Tanisha was talking about, tuition. It's expensive. Does it really matter? Is it worth it? And so on. And, you know, for quite some time, LaGuardia also spent time thinking about what is it that the college wants students to learn, and you know, what would be useful to take you know, moving forward into the world of work. If you know anything about LaGuardia, you know, from the 1970s when it was created, it was actually created to for upward mobility of people who maybe you know, didn't necessarily have the funding or all the opportunity to go to other schools to come here and be able to receive a quality education at, you know, a reasonable price, and then move on from there. Of course, over time, and to the point about tuition, and this is not even to make excuses, this is just the reality. The college is funded by the city and the state, and if you look at any of the studies and the stats in the US over time, governments have systematically cut funding to higher education institutions, resulting in this issue where, in order to function, the institutions have to increase tuition because the funding is not forthcoming from the government. Is that fair? I'm not even going to make you know, a statement about the fairness of it. It's just the reality of it, and no one likes that reality. Trust me, the extra money that you're paying is definitely not coming to us as faculty, right? It's a lot of it is just going to keep the college functioning. All right, so thank you for those comments. To move forward here, I thought it might be interesting for us to just look at what it is that LaGuardia, right, has committed for you to be taught in college, and then we'll see how that may stack up with what employers are looking for. And like I said, then we'll work on our resumes. So if you don't have your resume handy and it's stored somewhere on your computer, please pull it up at some point. If you don't have a resume at all, that's okay. I did include a Word document of a resume on our Zoom call material, so you can literally actually just pull that down and start using that as your sample resume that you can build your own resume from. So I just wanted to show you, this is what LaGuardia is committed to in every course in some way or another. The skills, they call it competencies, but basically skills and abilities that we have committed to teaching students. And so it's interesting what Jonathan Castro was talking about communication, right? One of the ways in which we, as whether it's your student or an employee, whether you basically show someone what you know is through clear communication. And that communication could be written. So you're talking about, writing an email, writing a memo, writing, a policy, things of that nature. It's also oral. So when you're speaking to people, being able to speak in a clear way. And I'm not talking about accents and things, because remember, almost all of us, most of us have accents. I'm talking about being able to order your thoughts in such a way that what you're saying is actually making sense to someone else and is, answering the questions, if there's a question, answering the question that they're asking. And then these days we also have what we call digital communication. And does anybody want to take a wild guess what you think digital communication may be about? What do you think when you hear digital? Or do you think of something when you hear digital?
I guess over the phone or something.
Well, that might still be oral, but you're already moving towards what that answer could be. It's talking about like a different medium of communication. So a typical digital communication could be like if you're making some type of a chart, or which someone could also argue is written, but it could be a chart, it could be a video that you're making, it could be some type of something that involves both written and visual, like pictures. And sorry, did you say something? Oh, I thought I cut you off. So it could be written, pictures, things of that nature. So something like that that you're already busy with is your e-portfolio, right? You guys are using an e-portfolio, which is like a multimodal approach to communication, because it's writing, there are pictures, sometimes there will be videos as well. And so we consider that a type of, in its combined form, a type of digital communication. So some of you may go into work where you have to create content. Let's say you decide to do marketing or something, you have to create content that could be in, a digital space. These days, because of the way the world works, I mean, even if you just think about doing a post in Instagram, or you think of making a TikTok video, those are all digital, forms of digital communication. So when you're creating that, there's maybe some thought going into it, and you're trying to say, I'm conveying, a message. And more often than not, the digital communication, the way you do it is even more strengthening, the message that you're trying to send. So LaGuardia is committed to helping students to be able to master clear communication, per Jonathan's comment about communication. And then Jonathan, when you said, creativity, how to work with other people and providing your thoughts and things like that. One of the things that LaGuardia is also committed to is this notion of global learning, which doesn't just mean learning about the world necessarily in abstract, but also learning to understand that there are different viewpoints, different values, and so on that other people bring to the table, and how to respect that and work together, right, to try and solve problems in a way that might be actually very unique, because we're bringing all our varied experiences together. So that's the global learning piece. Are you able to think and reason and respect, differences in culture, background, values? And when you're in the world of work, are you able to use those diversity as a strength, as opposed to, you know, trying to fight for your own viewpoint only. We're in a very, very exciting position being part of LaGuardia, because most of us come from somewhere else. So you actually get an exposure, even just within a classroom, to people from many different places in the world. And as you work together with them to understand, you know, the different ways of thinking that could really strengthen work products, strengthen your argument, or, you know, debating about some point, and so on. So that's global learning. Jonathan, you also spoke about how to provide your thoughts and so on. And then Anastasia spoke about being adaptable and etc. So a lot of what that piece is to some extent problem solving and making inquiries, trying to find information to present an argument, trying to, you say, okay, this is a problem that I have to solve. How am I going to solve it? You gather information, you analyze the information, and you try to come up with an answer. So if you've ever been maybe in a science class, you've maybe been in biology or chemistry or whatever, or even in a class where you had to write a paper to debate, you know, a point of view, that's inquiry and problem solving, right? Because you go around, you get all your sources, you try and figure out what all the thinking is around a particular topic, and then you try and answer the question that is being posed, and showing that you have, you know, the knowledge to solve whatever the problem may be. And even today, as we know about things like fake news and you know, all kinds of disinformation campaigns and so on, this notion of inquiry is very important, because a college education, to a very large extent, empowers you to be able to discern between, you know, facts and fiction, and what that really means, you know, in terms of finding primary sources of information, finding things that are peer reviewed, that are vetted, that you understand that multiple people have looked at this and people who are qualified are agreeing on something. We see it even now, right? With COVID-19, that you have all this diversity of thinking. People don't necessarily want to listen to, you know, those who have been working in various industries for years, and they're questioning things on the basis of, you know, what their high school friend or whatever, who isn't even a scientist, says, as opposed to getting the scientific information and still making their own decision. I'm not saying that we all should be like a herd of cattle and just believe the same thing, but what college is trying to show you is that there may be a variety of viewpoints. If you want to work through them, that's okay, but get your information from reliable sources so that you can then make your decision. So inquiry and problem solving is also something that you are learning in college. You may, I mean, your professor's not going to get up and say, today we're learning inquiry and problem solving. What they're just doing is the nature of the assignments and things that they are giving you is going to allow you to be able to develop that skill. And then the last one, and I think this is where we were also talking about flexible thinking to some extent. You know, you guys come from all different backgrounds. You've worked, you are still working, you maybe had schooling in this country or in a different country. You've had all kinds of life experiences. And one of the best things that you can do in terms of the world of work, and even as a student, is being able to bring together all the learning that you've had in various places and making connections to see how, you know, the fact that you may have worked as a server in a restaurant, what types of skills did you bring from that work that will actually help you now to, you know, work as some type of associate or VP in an office. Because often I find, and this is not always the case, but often with students, they think, well, my work as a sales associate, you know, in retail doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I want to become an accountant, or I want to become, you know, a healthcare administrator, or I want to become a personal financial advisor. That's not the case. So part of building a strong resume is thinking about, and I'll just write it here, thinking about transferable skills, right? So which skills did I have, when I was 17 and working as a sales associate in a retail store that I could also use when I eventually became an auditor at Deloitte? It becomes very obvious to me that things like being able to interact with clients, right? Customer service, being able to find answers to people's questions, being able to take responsibility for the area that I'm working in, being punctual, professional, all those things you're learning in these jobs that you have, and they transfer eventually to, whatever career you're building for yourself. But, we have to learn to integrate those skills so that we don't see everything separately. Even things that we do outside. So I know, the circumstances have changed now, but maybe you were playing in a soccer team, or maybe you were playing basketball, or you were doing, some type of video game league or whatever. Even those things that you do separately, where you learn teamwork, you learn organizational skills, you learn how to deal with defeat, disappointment, success, all those things can be integrated to be transferable skills. Not only on your resume, but I mean in life in general. And it's very beneficial when you can start to think of things in that way, because when you get to, say for instance, an interview, and someone says, oh, I see you play in a soccer league, you don't just then say, yeah, I really enjoy it, but you can then speak about how you started out and maybe you ended up winning, some championship, or you ended up losing. It doesn't matter. You learned teamwork, you learned all these problem solving, collaboration, etc. So, those are the things that LaGuardia is endeavoring to teach you. Like I said, it may not be obvious when you're in a class, like, ooh, this is what we're doing today. It's not going to be like that. It's got more to do with the fact that the types of assignments and things that you're doing are actually exercising and exercising all these skills for you to eventually have them, I guess, become as strong as possible. Does anybody have questions about this before we move on to focus on what employers are looking for?
No.
All right. So again, all these things that I'm talking about are here in the Zoom call materials. I'm just going to quickly show you one of the articles that's up there, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to focus on 2 paragraphs of this article. So basically, to just set the scene for this article and why we're even looking at it, right? So think about how we've progressed now. We spoke about, what are some of the arguments for college, and what are you thinking you should be learning in college, and what are you actually being taught? We spoke about what LaGuardia is, on a broad scale, saying that we would want you to learn by the time you're done here at LaGuardia. Now we're shifting a little bit to see, does what we're trying to teach you in college, specifically at LaGuardia, does that align with what employers are seeing as characteristics in employees that are successful, right, at their companies? And then eventually we'll move into talking about how to translate those things onto your resume. So in this article, I'll just lay the foundation. Basically, Google for many years focused almost exclusively on hiring only computer science students, right, with top grades from elite science universities. And this article is from like 2.5 years ago, but the point is it's definitely still relevant. So they were just trying to go for people who had really what they believed really serious, what we call STEM. So, science, technology, engineering, math background. And they felt that these would be the people that would succeed the most at the company. And then in 2013, so, 4 years before this article was even written, because obviously the study took a while, in 2013, they decided to test their hypothesis. So if you've done any science classes or statistics, you know that the hypothesis is basically something that you're saying, I think this is what the case is, but now I'm going to test to see if that is in fact the case. So they basically ran through all their hiring and promotion data, and they were trying to prove that people who have the best STEM knowledge, so all the, you know, the scientists basically are the ones who are going the highest up in the company, so are being promoted the most, and that all the top employees are basically the STEM people. That's what they were trying to prove. But it turns out that when they worked through all the hiring and promotion data, the folks who had the STEM expertise actually they looked for, 8 qualities of successful employees, and STEM expertise actually came in last. It was the 8th ranked quality. In other words, people who were successful at this company were not necessarily successful just because of their technical skills. There were other things that were actually driving their success for them to be able to move further up. And if you start looking at what they're saying, they say that the top 7 characteristics of success are all soft skills. Does anybody want to tell us what you think is meant by soft skills? Soft skills. Have you heard this term before? Surely it's not new.
Well, I think it's like being honest, being generous.
Mm-hmm. Those
Right?
are all examples.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, those are all examples of soft skills. There's a better way that they phrase it these days. It's called non-technical skills. So when you go into a profession, you have, so I'm an accountant, right? So when I went into accounting and auditing, I had all my accounting knowledge, which is my technical skills, but then these other non-technical or soft skills are also there, you know, or should be there to basically make you a well-rounded employee. So, you know, to the points that you were saying about being generous and all of that, yes, those fall in there as well. And what Google found was the things that actually made people succeed was, look at this, being a good coach. There's the communication again, right? Communicating and listening well. Here's what, you know, Jonathan, you were really hitting the nail on the head with a lot of the stuff you said. Possessing insight into others. You were talking about how to work with other people, right? So, and this is the global learning thing, right? Being able to understand other people's different values and viewpoints. Having empathy towards and being, you know, towards and being supportive of your colleagues. So empathy just basically in its simplest terms means you know what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes, and people do respond well to that. Sometimes you think, well, does empathy really belong in the corporate world? I remember when I was studying business, I thought, you know, I don't know if I want to study business because you have to be a really hard, you know, person walking all over everybody to succeed, but it's actually not the case, especially if you're a leader of a team. Empathy goes a long way. A good critical thinker, this is the inquiry and problem solving that we're talking about at LaGuardia. Good critical thinking and problem solving abilities, also considered non-technical, because these skills go across whatever industry you may be in. If you're good at thinking and solving problems, it doesn't relate specifically to working at Google. It could relate to working anywhere, including at the restaurant where you are currently serving, or, you know, at in your job in healthcare or whatever. And being able to make connections across complex ideas. This is the integrated learning that I was talking about, right? That I can understand that what I've learned, you know, a month ago when we were in a particular training is now applicable today in the scenario that I'm busy with, and so on. So those were the 7 things that the company actually unearthed and found people needed to succeed. And only at the end came the technical skills. So now you might say, well, then does it even make sense to study, you know, all the technical subjects? Of course it does. you do still have to, excuse me, you do still have to be able to do your job. The point is just that we cannot only focus on the technical at the expense of all these other things. And guess what? A lot of these other things you're learning in your home, you're learning, like I said, if you're involved in sports, you're learning on your job, and you're learning, you know, in your classes, because you have to be critically thinking and problem solving and so on. So when we look at completing the resume, you possibly also just want to be thinking about some of the non-technical skills that you have, as opposed to just being, yes, I'm good with Excel spreadsheets, yes, I'm good, you know, with databases, or yes, I'm good with counting things or whatever. There should also be other types of things that you want to be thinking about. And so this Google, the Google scenario fits in very well with, and this is the last thing I'll say before we go to the resumes, fits in really well with another bit of information that came through in a survey of over 200 employers, and we're talking about pretty, you know, large employers that are basically saying what do they want in employees. And this is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, a NACE survey. And when you look at what employers are valuing, do you see here the first thing? Critical thinking and problem solving. So what that means is they're not looking for people who are trying to find, like, this is the formula that I apply, and this is, if, you know, if this doesn't work, then the problem can't be solved. They're looking for people who can think flexibly about how to solve problems, think creatively about it, and also know how to gather information in order to solve a problem. You're already doing that. Remember when we were doing degree planning, and I gave you all that information about the different degrees and, you know, all the things you had to look up, and then you had to figure out which classes you were going to take. That was inquiry and problem solving. That was critical thinking. So don't think that you're not doing it. You absolutely are. It's just that sometimes you have to think carefully about when you're doing it, so that you can recognize that you already know how to do it. Teamwork and collaboration. This is back to, you know, being able to work with other people. Professionalism. Does anyone want to tell us what they think professionalism might mean? Any takers for professionalism? If I had to say to you, yeah, you know, I didn't really like working with that person, they weren't very professional, what would you think?
I think like professionalism is when somebody is, you know, acting accordingly, like around the work.
Okay, so, and what does acting accordingly look like to you?
Like professionally, like, you know, like no cursing, no dressing appropriately.
Okay, so there's the dress code, there's the speech of the person. What else?
I guess, I mean, hygiene. I mean, the way you behave.
Yeah, is this person normally on time also to work? Right, punctual, things like that. Yeah, good. So yeah, so professionalism, we're learning that all the time, you know, thank you. We, you know, sometimes I say to students, you're not gonna learn at some point after college how to be a professional. You're learning it now. So you have to practice to be on time to class. You have to practice, you know, the way if you're speaking to professors and things like that. It's all part of being able to practice what it will be like in the world of work. And some of you are working already, so you know what it's like to be professional and having a good work ethic. They're also looking for good communicators. They're looking for people who can lead and be, I guess, decisive in their actions. you know, there are all kinds of books that you can read around leadership. You can also find someone who you think is a good leader and ask them to mentor you. Leadership doesn't just come naturally necessarily to everybody. So part of being a good leader is also practice. So, you know, you can even join, once the world, you know, hopefully goes back to normal, join groups or other things where you have leadership opportunities so that you can begin to, you know, understand how to lead. And for me, my philosophy around leadership is frankly that when you're leading a group of people, you're actually serving them. And if you approach it with that perspective, you're serving them, you're not ruling over them. So if you approach it with that perspective, then it makes for a little bit more of a collaborative leadership situation. Digital technology, there's that word again. You should be able to handle yourself around computers and communicating digitally. They also expect you to know where you're going in your career. So if you're sitting in an interview and someone's asking you this classic question, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? You should at least have a decent answer to that, to show that you're thinking about how you can progress within the organization or within your career. And then again, there's this global learning piece where we understand that we are in a global economy and that people actually need to be able to look at multiple viewpoints and so on. And I mean, I'm not going to belabor the point too much. You have this document at your disposal. One thing that I'll just say is that this table here at the end is very interesting, because basically here's how important the employers are saying this thing is. Here they say whether the employees are actually doing it or not. So something like critical thinking and problem solving, they think it's, you know, in the 99th percentile of importance, but the employees are only demonstrating about 55%, you know, proficiency. Work ethic and professionalism, it's 100%, but we're only exhibiting 42%. That's, you know, not good. This is where there's a gap, right? Oral and written communication, 95%, only 41%. So things that they feel people should be working on. Career management, the last one year, 47% think that employees are only proficient to the extent of 17%. So what does that mean, right? Why should you care? Basically, it's saying that as you have these opportunities to develop these skills in college, you really need to grab them. I know often, you know, students don't like to work in groups, but I have to remind them that when you're in the world of work, you have to work in groups, right? And so what you can learn now about problem solving to work in groups is going to be to your benefit. Sometimes you get questions and things in school and in class that are very difficult to solve. You can use this opportunity to begin to develop some type of thinking around that, or system for yourself on how you solve a problem, right? So that by the time you get to work, you're above your peers because you are already, you know, exhibiting a lot of these characteristics that employers are looking for. And so where's the connection? When we go into building resumes now, which we will in a few moments, I want you to be thinking about you know, the way in which you've written the things that are in your resume already, or if you haven't yet, how you'll do that, and be thinking about how you might be able to emphasize things like teamwork or things like problem solving and so on, especially since those are many of the items that, that employers are actually looking for. Does anybody have questions as of now regarding either the Google article or this survey? All right. So take a minute now, if you haven't done so already, and pull down this, or either bring up your own resume or pull down this sample resume. I put it in both PDF and Word document, but if you want to use it to make changes and stuff, obviously you have to do the Word documents. I'll give you 2-3 minutes to just get the resume out if you haven't done so already. finish the attendance while you do that. All right. So I don't know if you guys know how to, if you go into the, I guess it's the participants, or you can do it in the chat window. I just like an idea of how many people already have a resume that they can work on. So maybe if you can just either mark a yes next to your name, you know, in the participant option, or you can use the chat and just say yes if you can't find the yes option. But please just give me an indication of whether you have a resume already or not, just so I know how to pitch the rest of the discussion. So mark yes if you have a resume already, or tell me in the chat window. So I see 3 people so far have a resume. Anybody else? Okay. So you should have your own resume, or as I said, let me just pull up this other one here. Where is it? Oh, no, well, that's the workshop. Just 1 second. Oh dear, I don't think I actually pulled it down. Okay, let me just get it. All right, so for those who don't have a resume, you, like I said, you can use this as at least a basis. I got the sample resume from a colleague who is also a professor of the People, Work and Organization class. And so she does work in that class to help students, you know, get ready, obviously, for the world of work. And part of that is the resume. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about here is from, you know, her expertise in this area. And I'll just go through a few things here before we start. So this presentation is also on Blackboard. Does anybody want to say what they think is the point of a resume? Is it to get you a job? Is it to get you an interview? Is it just a formality? Or you know, is it something that frankly now LinkedIn has managed to cancel, so you don't have to even have a resume?
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure a resume is to get everybody's attention, and then to
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, to land you an interview at least.
Yeah, so it's you're definitely trying to get someone's attention. You know, I've been involved in interviews when I was at Deloitte and also at LaGuardia. I remember one round of of searches that we had. I think we got 156, almost 160 resumes for people applying for 4 positions, right? So 160 resumes and only 4 positions were available. So you can imagine the amount of time that we actually had available to even look in detail at every resume. We did not have a lot of time, and basically all we ended up doing was following direction from our human resource saying that we had to look for key qualifications and keywords. And if people didn't meet, like, you know, specific things that they had listed for us, then we just had to move on to the next resume. So I like how you said that the resume is part of getting someone's attention. That's so true, because it's very likely that you know, a potential employer is not going to spend a ton of time you know, looking at resumes because they just don't have the time. So for instance, when, you know, when we look at this resume, you can see already, and I'll, you know, carry on with the presentation, you can see
Wait,
already,
Professor, your screen is frozen for me.
oh no, are we back to this problem again? Okay, hang
Oh,
on.
it just changed.
Yeah, the USB-C hub got disconnected. I don't know. I'm not even doing anything major. It's like, it seems that today is just a technical problem. But you can see now, right?
It's still frozen, but I see it says first name, last name, objective.
Yeah. So do you see me moving the cursor around, or is it frozen?
Move it again.
Yeah. I'm moving it. I'm highlighting.
I can see it.
Oh, I can see it.
Okay. Maybe
It's like
we probably also have to be mindful of the fact that we all have different connections. I do think something's up with my connection today, but it may also be just connections in general. Okay. So, but tell me again if you for whatever reason can't see what's going on. So what I was saying here about this resume is, you know, if someone has, you know, 5 minutes or whatever to look at your resume, you want to be as, you know, it needs to be as clean and easy to read as possible. So you can see already that, you know, there are, and most people do this anyway, but just in case for some reason you don't have this, you have different like subheadings basically where things are in. You're highlighting if this is something you'd want to highlight, you're highlighting the school that you went to, you're highlighting the different positions that you had, just so that it's not all just, you know, one thing and nothing is highlighted. The person has to kind of go and dig for stuff. And also there is an objective that says, you know, what the applicant is trying to accomplish, which also helps, you know, the reader to see if the resume landed, you know, in the correct place. So it is to get someone's attention and to get an interview at a minimum. You know, LinkedIn doesn't substitute for a resume. More often than not, you have to submit a resume if you are trying to get a position, because people have to follow protocol, and part of that is definitely looking through resumes. Having LinkedIn is great, and you should have it, because that's also another way that employers find people. And so if you do have a LinkedIn, you know, make sure that it's updated, that you connect to as many people as possible in your network. I have students who even connect with me on LinkedIn, that's fine. And so that's something that can supplement your resume. And you know, she shares that you should have at least these things, your objective for what type of job you're trying to get. You know, Tanisha was talking about healthcare management. So her objective is probably to obtain an internship or position, or, you know, work in a healthcare management environment. What are some of your accomplishments? And giving as much information as possible, but while still sticking to the one page, right? One page resume is definitely what you want to go with. Don't try to make it too long. I had to get used to this when I moved to this country, because where I come from, you don't squash everything onto one page. It's multiple pages, but yeah, stick to one page. in this piece, we just say these are some of the sections that could be on a resume, and these are some of the things that you absolutely have to include, but some of the others you could include depending on your specific circumstances, right? So maybe you have major volunteer work, or you were involved in professional development. Somebody else may not have that. So just looking through this, if you go to the sample resume again, this person has the objective, they have the education, experience is a must. I mean, you're trying to get a job, so you need to list anything that you've done, even if it was for no pay, even if it was something, like volunteering in a family member's business or something like that. All those things count. What skills do you have? Do you have any leadership, if that's applicable, and any other interests? And then you can also, like I said, supplement with anything else. Maybe you were on a major project, maybe you have leadership, volunteer work, and so on. We spoke about the one pager. Definitely want to have bullet points that are strong. You don't have to write I, every time I did this, I did that. You rather want to start your bullet with an action verb. So a verb, right? A verb is an action word. So analyzed, you see there, prepare, monitor and reconcile, analyze, receive, computed, resolved. So we're talking about what was the action that you did while you were in this job. And it's not just the action per se, but also want to talk about results, right? So what was the outcome when I was analyzing this thing that resulted in, us increasing sales by 5% or whatever? You may not have all that information at your disposal, but think about how you might do it. Also, this is without doubt very important. Remember, if someone's just glancing at your resume, it has to be formatted appropriately. I know, some of these things are rendering funny because I pulled it into Google Docs, which is why I recommend, and you probably know this already, if you're going to send your resume somewhere, send it as a PDF. Don't send it as a Word document, because you don't know what operating system that the other person is using, and you could find out that your resume comes through as a total jumble on the other side if you send it as a Word document. So look how this renders. It's not too bad, but if I had used the PDF, sorry, it's just gonna download in here. If I had used the PDF, everything is basically perfect, and there's no need for the person who's reading my resume to have access to it in Word. So send your resume as a PDF to avoid any issues with formatting. Please be accurate and factual. I mean, I don't think anybody's gonna lie on their resume, but be sure that whatever you're putting down, that it's definitely something that's accurate and not something that's going to happen or whatever. It needs to be factual. Spelling and grammar, definitely, it's not okay to have any type of grammatical and spelling errors. What you want to do is, if you're updating your resume, make the updates, put it away, look at it again. You might see something you missed, ask someone else to read it for you. They might notice something that you didn't notice in the dates or in your spelling and so on. You could be perfect with your grammar and your spelling, but the reality is just when you're looking at the same thing over and over, you might miss something. So definitely have a second pair of eyes looking at it. When you write these bullets in your resume, the verb, right? What did you do? Like how that person I analyzed, or I received, or I resolved. Why did you do it? Maybe, the manager asked me to analyze financial data to see some of the trends in, our sales, and then the results. So if we look at an example of what this person says over here, analyze financial data to foresee trends that can help offset losses during slow seasons. So that tells a potential employer that you knew how to do this work, but you also knew how the impact of that work would benefit the business, right? So that's how you want to write. Not just I analyzed, financial data. the person reading the resume is going to say, and what happened after that, right? And don't forget, of course, the non-technical skills. I wrote down the stuff from what we were reading in those articles, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, teamwork, professionalism. Those are all things that, if it is appropriate to fit into your bullet, you should be able to work it in a way that makes sense. Now, let me throw a question back at you. Like maybe some of you are still working now, but some of you may have been either reduced hours or no hours because of COVID. And, if we think post-COVID, what do you think employers are going to want even more now in this time of COVID, but also after COVID? Tell me some things that you think might now be valued on a resume that maybe wasn't as relevant 2 months ago.
Well, I think employers needs more protection, like gloves and masks and all this stuff.
So yeah,
now in this time of COVID.
So we're looking for, so the environment has to be, so they're probably looking for people who may be, safety conscious and have read up on, you've read up on what is needed. And from the employers, what's happening now? I guess people are working from home now. So what types of things do you think employers are looking for if someone is working from home? Like how does that change the interaction? Employees need more computer skills, Alexis is saying. Yes. And why? Because now everything's happening on a computer, right? It's not necessarily, we're just stuck in front of the computer the whole time. So absolutely, you need computer skills. You need to understand the systems of the business. What about communication, anybody, during this time? How are you communicating with people? We're not face-to-face anymore. So how are you communicating?
6 feet away.
Yes, 6 feet away. But when you don't see the person, how are you communicating with me right now?
Email or FaceTime.
Email, video calls, or even just normal phone calls. So what does that tell us about our communication in this time? How do you think, I'm just feeding you the answer now, but do you think employers are looking for better communicators now that everybody is away from each other? Yeah, because you're sending emails. The emails need to make sense. They need to deal with what the issue actually is. They need to be sent to the right place. If you're on a phone call, people don't have a lot of time. Like even when I'm preparing to teach this class, I have to think about the fact that I'm taking you for 2 hours or whatever out of your life. Whatever I'm trying to share with you needs to be of some value. Otherwise, and you're so open to believing that your time is being wasted. That's that's up to you. But from my perspective, I can't just think about like, oh, what do I want to teach you and what's going to be cool for me? I have to be thinking about what's valuable to you guys in this time, because you're sacrificing 2 hours of your day to be here. So it has to be valuable. So even if you're an employee in this time and you call a meeting, it has to be of value to the people who are, working with you. So I know that in the past, especially before we all went, I guess, online, sometimes I would be in meetings and I'm like, wow, some of the meetings are not really a good use of my time. And I think people now become more careful about communication and trying to figure out ways to communicate that are clear and concise and don't, waste people's time. So you said, in the time of COVID and post-COVID, we want employees who are, aware of safety and protection and how to behave within a workplace, that they are probably at least informed about, what is necessary. We definitely need people with very good computer skills. We still need people who are good communicators, but even more so, than before. And I think we still need people who are disciplined and professional, because if you're working from home, I mean, most of us are just so busy. I don't think we're really wasting time, but there is this element that people always worry about, that if someone's working from home, you know, are they really working? So there's also discipline and communication involved there
Because,
too.
sorry for interrupting. What about the person that doesn't work at home? For those who work, let's
So
say,
the
at the
people who are
supermarket, yeah.
in the
Yeah.
office, you mean? Yeah.
I mean, no,
So
like for
talk
those
about that.
like supermarket, like what do they need?
Yeah, and so exactly. So tell me some stuff. What do you think they need?
Well, I said
Or
it
you,
before, like
the
gloves,
protection?
masks,
Yeah,
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 like
yeah, yeah,
stuff and stuff like
yeah.
that.
So, and that's what the employees need from their employer. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's such a difficult experience, because I also think the employees need to be able to communicate with the employer about when their needs are not being met, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's this difficult situation where people might think that they'll lose their jobs if they don't say something. But I mean, your personal safety is of utmost importance. So it comes down to, in some way, communication again, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that if your employer is not supplying you with what they need to, or if the working conditions are not what they need to be, that you can find a way to communicate where you say, you know, I know this is a difficult time. It's a difficult time for everybody. And, you know, even in this time, we still feel that XYZ is not happening, and that it's making for an unsafe working condition. And then you hope that you have an employer who's empathetic and will make changes. We saw last week that that didn't happen at Amazon, right? Some people complained about working conditions and were whistleblowers saying that this is not right. And guess what? They got fired. But then Amazon got shamed in public, and rightly so, for firing people because they were trying to speak up, you know, for workers' rights. So I think employers
Mm-hmm.
should also be welcoming people to say, you know, how they feel in this time. So communication is definitely key. Thank you for saying that. And to those of you who are working
No,
on the
thank you.
front lines, we are. I mean, I am eternally grateful to those who are risking themselves so that others can stay home. So thank you for that. I'll leave it there, because the other things are just talking about how to discuss your accomplishments, which, I mean, I'll just mention that they have the CAR method, CAR. You talk about what was the challenge, what's the action that you took, and what was the result. This is also a classic thing that you can use in an interview, because they normally ask you things like, tell me about a time when, you know, you overcame an obstacle, or you worked in a team, or blah, blah, blah. And you can actually say, okay, this was the situation, this was how I handled it, and this was the outcome. So, you know, those types of things can come up in your resume. They can also come up in an interview. And she gives, and you guys have access to this, she gives an example of how to write a good accomplishment. So you can say, I trained new employees at my job, right? That's great, but so what? Then train new employees resulting in increased customer satisfaction. Not bad. Trained more than 15 employees. Now you give the person an idea of the scale of the training that you were doing over a 6-month period. That's a very long time to be training people, right? Resulting in increased customer satisfaction. So I'm like, okay, this person can work with a lot of people over a sustained period of time. This is sounding very good. And then if this information is at your disposal, you increase customer satisfaction by 20% by providing effective training for over 15 employees in a 6-month period. You see how the same information can become so much more powerful if you take some time to think about how to write it out. So I'm going to stop there and say that we can take a 10-minute break here, but in the meantime, if people want to start looking at their resume and comparing maybe some of what you've written to what's on the sample resume, and also what's in this, you know, presentation here, can start doing that after the break. Yeah, let's just take a few minutes to stretch our legs, and then I'll step away for about 3 minutes and then I'll be back. with the break. I put it in the chat, but I just want to go over it again. I think there's at least 1 or 2 people in this class who are close to graduating and possibly might even be done in fall 1 or fall 2. Remember, part of this class was making sure that you are registered, and many of you are registering. But I just want to emphasize that if you are graduating, you also have to register for this course intent to graduate. It's not an actual class that you have to attend. It's basically just alerting the registrar that you believe you've completed all the requirements to be able to graduate, and that you want them to check and confirm, because you can't get your diploma if you don't do that. I got a very or we as the faculty got a very frantic message from one of our admins yesterday saying she's encountering a lot of students even this semester. So if you know of anybody who's supposed to graduate this semester who did not register for the GRD 0000 and now is being told by the registrar that they can't get their diploma. So she said if anybody is in that situation, we can send them to her, but please make sure that you're doing that. It is on the degree map that I shared with you guys, but it may have fallen through the cracks. So again, if this applies to you, if fall 1 or fall 2 will be your last semester at LaGuardia, you absolutely have to register for that course. Any questions about that? All right. So I'll say one more thing from a kind of an administrative point of view. You'll see here in my open document, we got an update from the president of the college today, just talking about all the things that we are obviously curious about, like fall, will classes be in person or not? Unfortunately, as I predicted already when I opened the email, we still don't know, right, whether we will be fully online, partially in person, or what. It's too difficult to say because the city hasn't even opened up yet, so it's just impossible to say at this time. So if you're still wondering about whether you should register for the fall, we can talk that through, but please be prepared that even though classes for the fall may be showing days and times and stuff that they're supposedly meeting in person, the reality is that, given the way things are going with COVID, that the CUNY as a whole may decide to stay in distance learning mode for the fall. As soon as I know anything more, I will share what I know with you, but at the moment we're all in the same boat. We don't know. So for the remainder of our time together, I would like you to work on, for those who, I know a few of you said here in the chat window that you already have a resume. That's fine. But what I'd like you now to do is, have your resume in one, maybe open up the sample resume on the side. You also have the resume workshop info that I was sharing with you guys. And I just want you to spend some time trying to look through to see how you can either start from scratch if someone doesn't have a resume, or how you can rewrite parts of your resume to be more in line with what we're talking about, with how to write a strong bullet for your resume. Let me see. I can't obviously see what people are doing. I'm not going to ask you to share your screen or anything, but this is what we'll spend maybe the next 20-25 minutes doing. And then I just want to remind you that this is something that is going to end up being on your e-portfolio. You're working towards another 5% of your grade. So, we're not just doing this for the sake of doing it, but it's for you to have a resume at hand, and also to be able to get some points for the class. And the last thing, I keep saying the last thing I'll say, right? But there's just so much going on with jobs and stuff. I just want to remind you, even now, that is that contact tracing recruitment that I was talking about. The information is up here. I sent it a few days ago. There was also some job opportunities with Apple coming to LaGuardia. That's on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, and on Thursday. So, you know, if you want to participate in any of those, you're welcome to. Okay, so I'll leave it there, and you guys spend some time working on your resume now, and ask me questions, you know, as you go through, if you have any questions. All right, it's 12:30. Again, I'm in a bit of a tough spot because I obviously can't see what everybody's doing. So I can't tell if people are super busy doing this work or if you're already done and so on. So what I'll say is this. I was just mentioning in the chat that, you know, you also want to think about your non-technical skills, whether it's leadership or other co-curricular activities. Think about how you can emphasize that in the resume, but I guess more so also think about if you don't have anything like that, how you might be able to begin to build that. And then what I'll say now is, for the next 15 minutes, you're welcome to stay on and continue to work on your resume and ask me questions. Or otherwise, for those who feel that they've done the work or that they, you know, have other more pressing things to do and they'll finish their resume by the 31st, you're also welcome to drop off the call. I already took everybody's attendance. So again, you're welcome to stay on and work and talk to me about questions you have about your resume, or otherwise you can go and you know, do whatever else you need to do in your life. I'll also be on the office hours at 1 p.m. if people have more questions. But I'm here now. I'll be here now until just before 1. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Professor, I have a question. It's
Yeah.
it's not. It's about the class. It's more like.
So do
I
you
like
go
my
ahead.
my attendance. Like, I know I've been late to the last few classes recently.
So I'll just say what I said before. I take attendance 2 ways. I take physical attendance for the people who are actually on, let me just get out of here. I take physical attendance for the people who are actually on the call. But I also, if people are either late or missing or whatever, if you do the work that is related to that week, you know, of classes, then that's also a form of attendance. Does that make sense? So if you are,
Oh, yeah, of course.
if you are physically present, you're fine. If you are not physically present, but you have completed the work that is required of you, then you're also okay. So you benefit more. I mean, obviously this is my opinion. I'm a teacher, but I think you benefit more by actually being in the class so that you can know what work is needed to be done and so on. So you're here. So I've marked you present. I know I have a late next to your name, but the point is you're here. And if you're still also doing the work, then you would just be in attendance. Okay?
Yeah, but like, I know like being late is not good at all. Is that affecting my grade?
Yeah, but I can't affect your grade based on a physical attendance because there are other people who are not attending at all, but they are submitting the work. So it would be unfair to impact people's grades. Like attendance is something I have to do for the college, but because of the nature of the situation now where some people are actually sick and they can't come onto the call, but they're still trying to do the work. Some people are looking after family members, blah, 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 but they're still submitting the work. I cannot let attendance or lateness impact your grade. The only thing that is impacting your grade right now is if you are doing the work or not. I still have to complete attendance for the college. So if people don't do the work and they don't come to the class, then they are absent. But I'm not counting, you know, absences and saying, well, now that you've been absent, so many times, you're failing the class. It's not like that. What ends up happening is when people are absent like that and they don't do the work, they fail the class anyway because they're not doing the work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as you remember, I gave you guys this whole thing of everything that is due, right? So as long as you go through this and you make sure that you were doing everything that you're supposed to do, and I'll give you guys like a final deadline by which everything that has to be done on the e-portfolio is done and so on. I'm trying to be, I'm more lenient this semester than I normally am because I just understand that it's a very difficult situation. My aim is definitely not for anybody. I don't want people to fail this class, but if people don't do the work, there's nothing I can do. So I will still accept, I'm still accepting late work and things of that nature, just so that people don't have to fail. But some people are just missing. You're not one of those people.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you so
please
much,
just
Professor.
continue. Yeah, you're welcome. Please just continue to refer to this document. Make sure that you are up to date. If you don't know what something is, more likely, like, if you don't know what the work is that I'm talking about, more likely than not, if you go to the Zoom call materials, you'll see for each week is everything that we did. If you still can't find something that you need to do, just contact me, okay? There's no shame, even if you're late with something. I prefer for students to contact me and say, I didn't do the financial literacy reflection, because I didn't attend the studio hour or whatever. I don't know where to find it. Can you help me? Absolutely, I'll help you. But I don't want people to come to me at the end of the semester when they've earned a particular grade and it's all said and done, and now they want to say, well, is there anything I can do to fix my grade? Then it's too late. Now there's still time. Okay?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Professor. Okay, well, I mean, I had a resume already set up, but I'm gonna just modify it a little bit. Or at least
Yeah.
I was modifying it. I'm gonna keep doing that.
Yeah, and when I look at you guys' resumes after you submit them, by the due date, which is May the 31st, I'm going to look to see, at least at a minimum, that you have the sections that we discussed. I mean, some of them may not be applicable, leadership, whatever, but most are, and that you guys are writing the bullets, in the way that we discussed. I'm looking for that, at a minimum. So definitely modify what you think needs modification. It does take some work, but I think it's going to be useful work, because then that becomes a resume that you can carry forward and just update, as you do more, as you, I guess, progress in your career. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Professor. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go now. All right. I would stay and ask, but
you guys are welcome to, like I said, you're welcome to go. It's been a long class. You don't have to sit here, as long as you also just know, like I said, the due dates, and you are working accordingly. And remember, part of this class is also the Thursday class, the studio hour. I didn't mention that when we spoke about attendance. So, I can't always remember who has and hasn't attended. But, even if you haven't attended for a while, or if you have, just keep going to that, because it's whatever you're doing in that class is following directly from whatever we discussed in this class. Okay.
yep. Okay, Professor.
Okay. Have a good day.
Yep. Be safe.
You too.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Can I ask you something before you leave?
Yes, you absolutely.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Give me a second, please.
Yeah.
What is the making connection paper that's due on the 17th?
So I can show you that. Can you bear with me for a minute?
I'll tell
and I'll
you.
show you?
Yeah, I can. I'll tell you would be going over it. So I was like, but you haven't. So I was like, I
Because
saw it on the due
she'll
date.
go. Yeah, she'll go over it in the
Oh.
class, but it's good. I'm still recording, so it's good. We can go over it. I just have to log into ePortfolio quickly. So it's actually a pretty, I would say, for lack of a better word, basic reflection, and it's tying in with what we discussed today around being able to understand how the learning, I guess, that you have in different places, whether it be at work, at school, in different classes at school, how those things tie into each other. So you're familiar with this Planning for Success tab because you guys have been working on it. On that tab, there's something called Making Connections, and you would be looking at the early stage reflection. And what this has got to do with is the integrative learning competency that I was talking about earlier. So you can see it's pretty easy to follow. It's saying that in order to demonstrate your ability to make connections between different experiences, please answer the questions below. What's one experience, situation, or activity you had before coming to LaGuardia that you think will help you be successful here? So you can talk about anything that happened. Maybe, you know, people who immigrated, people who were in high school, people who, you know, had some work experience. Please explain in detail how you believe this experience, situation, or activity will help you during your time at LaGuardia. So we're trying to emphasize here that thing that I was talking about with transferable skills, where you may have done something before and how does that help you to deal with what you're dealing with at LaGuardia. Then, and you just try, it's a short reflection. And then the second part is whether or not you're taking the first year seminar for business only or taking other courses, think about experiences, situations, or activities you have had during the semester, inside and outside the classroom, either at the college or in your personal life. How might you use those experiences to support your academic success? Which transferable skills or abilities have those experiences helped you build? Why are those skills and abilities important to you? So, I mean, we're in a very strange semester, obviously, because we all went distance learning. There's not a lot of on-campus activity and so on. But yeah, the hope is that a student, so you in this case, would be able to think maybe about something that's happening in your life or something that's happening in your other classes, and how, you know, you link those experiences and what types of skills and abilities are coming out of those experiences that you would be able to carry forward with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's going to be like in an essay?
Yeah, you're literally going in here and just answering the question. So we don't even stipulate how long it needs to be, because you can just write whatever you need to write. I mean, if someone writes 2 sentences, it's probably not that great, but it's probably not going to be more than 2 very short paragraphs. Okay.
So for the last 2 assignment, the time management and the person, that can also be the same. You don't have to be like a full on, because I did it. I didn't submit it, but it's just that since you said it have to be an essay, I'm like, dang, it have to be like 3 or 4 paragraphs. So I don't have that much. So I was like, I'm still
No, you're writing what you're writing. I don't believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because, you know, I'm doing so much every day that I honestly, sometimes I don't remember everything, you know, line for line, but yeah, there's no word limit. So you just answer the questions. Once you're done answering the questions, you're done. I'm not looking for, I don't want to artificially create a situation where I'm telling people you have to write 200 words or whatever, because I'm asking you very specific questions. And once you've answered the question, you're done.
Because when I say write a brief essay, I was that's the part that got me. I was like, wow, I have to write an essay.
I'm sorry. So this was probably written. It's just so that, because people will answer in bullet form if you don't tell them to at least make it like a cohesive piece. So I've had this where people just write yes, you know, bullet, yes or no, or whatever. So the point about the essay is less about length and more about structure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so sorry about that. That is okay.
So now I can submit my work.
Yeah. So you'll be fine as long as your brief essay is answering the questions. You're solid. Thanks for asking that clarification.
No problem.
I don't mean people to panic here about this. Is supposed to be, you know, light reflections just to make people think, not to give you extra stress.
Bro, I was panicking because I have like an essay a week for English, then I have like an exam a week for BTM.
But you know, and Dal, you've emailed me before. You can always email me for clarification. I'm very happy to speak to students. In fact, I feel like I don't have students contacting me often enough to ask. And I mean, I won't know your question, and I'm not gonna bug you guys. So please, anytime if something seems weird or it's unclear, just ask. I'm happy to clarify.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor, and have a good day.
Okay, you too. Yeah, Jonathan, sorry, I know you're waiting for me.
Do you know I was sick during the past week, right? So I would like to know if I have time to like submit the assignment.
Of course. Yeah. Of course. I remember at one point you told me, you said you had your back was sore or something happened? Yeah.
I was feeling like weak and all that stuff. So, and could you show me like how to get into the financial literacy reflection, like on the portfolio?
Well, the reflection itself is just a written thing on, and I can send this to you in an email if you want.
It's fine.
Let me share my screen with you quickly so that you can see on Blackboard also where the stuff is. You see my screen now, right? So this week of 421 and 428, this whole thing was about financial literacy, all right? And this is the reflection over here. So if did I click on it now? I don't know. Okay. So looking at it, it's referring, and it's again this brief essay that Andal was talking about. But again, the essay piece is just because of the structure, right? So it's asking some questions about your personal financial philosophy, like where, what's your attitude towards money, where do you think it came from, etc. And then you're answering these questions, which, as I said, I can send to you if you can't find them properly. But then where you're going to put your answers is on the e-portfolio. You're going first year seminar for business coursework, then go to other assignments.
Yeah, because I did it. I did it on Google Drive.
I apologize. I didn't need to tell you all the previous stuff. My bad. So just over here, you can just copy and paste whatever you wrote. You copy and paste over here in this. So you put personal financial literacy reflection, copy and paste your answer, and click publish changes so that we know that that your work is done.
But we don't need to like add the questions, right? Just the answer.
No, you're just putting the answer. Right? I have the questions. You don't need to put the.
Okay.
You don't need to put the.
And
what
kind of pictures do we have to add, like for
anything?
Anything?
It's all open. So if this is your financial literacy thing, then you're welcome to put any type of picture to do with finances, money, whatever. It's your decision.
Thank you so much for explaining it to me.
So then you can tell me by when you don't have to tell me this now. You can